Let's talk about the power of reading books. Welcome to today's Steelo podcast, where I'll be talking about the 5 books that definitely allowed me to be successful in business, and also why I think reading books is probably one of the best things you can do. So let's actually start with the latter. Now, when you think about a book, it takes an enormous effort to publish a book. Now, I know it because I published a book called The Steel Addict. It's more about the steel world and how to run a business in the steel industry. Although there are quite a lot of interesting insights into business as a whole. But it took me a long time to actually publish it. And you think it's easy, just sit down, write all the chapters and you're ready to print. But actually the writing is the easy part. You then have to edit it, the proofreading, and shift different things around and re-edit. And I guess one of the most annoying things is that you end up reading your work like 10, 15, maybe sometimes 20 times. So you're losing the passion you had at the beginning, yet you have to focus more and more the closer you get to the end, because that is when sort of the final text comes to life and you have to make sure there aren't any mistakes. So it takes probably a year or 2, sometimes 3, to publish a book. And quite often someone who decides to publish a book means they've got this burning desire to share the knowledge they've gained. Now, that knowledge could have been gained over their lifetime, so it could be like 30, maybe sometimes 50 years worth of experience, condensed, distilled, and then put into a book which you can buy for 12, 15 pounds. Now, in my opinion, that is the biggest bargain you can ever find. Someone's knowledge condensed into a few hours read for 12 pounds. So I could probably say that books are for free when you put it into perspective, and quite often the knowledge, the thoughts, and the change that you actually end up doing in your life from those books are worth so much more than the 12 pounds you initially pay for them. So for me, if you don't read, you're missing probably one of the biggest opportunities out there. And it's like taking shortcuts in life. Instead of experiencing it all by yourself, you read others' experiences and then you see the same signs or things happening in your life. And by knowing how someone else struggled with it and what helped them out of the situation, you can do the same without wasting your time going through it all over again. So yeah, I can't recommend reading books more. Although, as funny as it sounds, even though I read a lot, I don't necessarily like reading books. Now, you would probably ask, how's that? Well, the solution is quite simple. I find a problem first and then search for a book that addresses that problem. And I guess every one of us has a problem. It doesn't have to be business related. It could be in our lives or self-development. Find something that you're struggling with. And with today's online tools, you can very quickly find a book, read reviews, and order it. And today it's even easier because you don't even have to read it. You can listen to an audiobook. Having said that, I'm not a fan of audiobooks because I like to stop and think. So when I read something clever, something that resonates with me, I stop. I normally have a highlighter in my hand. I mark that text. I think about it. I sort of break it down into pieces. Whereas if you're listening to an audiobook, you don't have time for it. It's gone. The narrator is reading, is continuing with the reading. And what happens is, at least for me, I either don't concentrate on what is being said and I'm like totally lose the plot. I just don't know what's being talked about because I've skipped a few pages. Or I don't feel I have enough time to think about and actually embrace what has been said. So it's one or the other. And I know audiobooks are probably best used when driving, but it's exactly the same experience where you're more focused on the road. You're not really sort of absorbing everything that's being said. And then again, when there's something interesting, you're not necessarily in a position to pause it or rewind it and so on. So yeah, that's why I'm not a big fan of audiobooks. Although I do agree they're very handy. They sort of allow you to go through a book without you having to actually read it yourself. And I also agree it's a very good time killer when driving, especially long distances. So going back to reading books, there's this thing where people don't like reading books, which, like I said, I also sign up to it. But the thing that helped me is to put it into perspective. So knowing that the knowledge within a book has been the knowledge of someone else for like 30, 50 years, and will take me only a few hours to read it, then it's actually very, very valuable. So even if you break it down to the hours you will spend on reading that book, those are hours well spent. You definitely can't say that that is wasted time. Now, when talking about time management, I guess the biggest killer for everyone in terms of time or wasting time is social media. So if you have the time to browse through social media, that is the time you're not spending on learning from someone else's experiences. So I understand that we all live in a very fast-paced world, but I still believe, and I know based on my experience, that there's always a way to make time for reading. The other thing that quite helps, and you might laugh, is to pretend you have diarrhea. Now, if you had diarrhea now, even if you're driving, you would stop much sooner than you'd probably expect. You will find a way to go to the toilet. It might be the nearest services or nearest shops, or if you're really desperate, you'll just stop on the hard shoulder and sort yourself out there and then. So it all depends on our priorities. So if you're able to pretend you have diarrhea, and by doing so you allocate even half an hour a day, just pretend you're on the toilet. By the way, you can sit on the toilet without actually sorting yourself out, but just sitting on the toilet and reading the book. So you could almost literally pretend you have diarrhea. And by allocating half an hour a day, that will allow you to slowly and gradually make progress through that book. And like I said, when you find a burning problem and you find a book that addresses that problem, then reading is a joy, and it's not something that you sort of hate doing. So that is definitely something that I found very helpful. And when it comes to now the books that helped me in business, I will start off with a book which you probably are aware of. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, this isn't necessarily a business book, but it is a personal finance management book. Now, I don't want to go into too much details, but I think this is a book that every single adult should read. And hopefully with the new plan of the government extending mathematics until the age of 18, I'm hoping that this will be on the list of must-read books. Just in short, it is about how money works and the fact that the trap that most of us fall in: the more we earn, the more we end up spending, therefore we actually not benefiting at all. And the whole idea is about investing in assets that bring in money month in, month out, with minimum input on your behalf. So that definitely helped me understand how money works, and is definitely the book to start with. The next book that I would recommend is The E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber. He is the father of the phrase, work on your business, not in your business. Now, this phrase has been quoted by so many others that I can see it sort of being forgotten that he is the father of that phrase. And he came up with the concept that a business should work without the owner, not so that the owner can lie on a beach without doing anything, but so that the owner can focus on strategy and future growth. One of the other reasons is so that if the owner is, let's say, ill or has to spend time with a family or other problems in life, then the whole company doesn't fold and it still continues to operate, which at the end of the day also provides job security for everyone within that company. So yeah, this is a very nice book to read. Similar to the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, they are business novels. So there's actually a story going on, and in between the lines you can read the sort of life or business wisdom. The next book I wholeheartedly recommend is The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt and Jeff Cox. It is a book about the theory of constraints, and I recommend you listen to my other podcast where I'll talk about the theory of constraints. But to me, it is a game-changing methodology, even a way of living. It's all about simplifying things, about going back to basics, and just taking shortcuts and achieving the final goal as quickly as possible. Similar to the previous books, it is a business novel, so very, very easy to read. And by the way, it is co-authored by Jeff Cox, and I've actually got a book that is awaiting publishing, also written with Jeff Cox, also a business novel. It's called Stand Back to Grow, which I think is the best book ever. It will probably be on it will definitely be on my desk and hopefully on others' desks as well. But that's yet to come. The next book I'll recommend is written by Captain David Marquet. And the title is Turn Your Ship Around. Long story cut short, he was a captain who was being prepared for one type of a submarine, and a few weeks before his assignment he was chucked onto another submarine that he didn't know anything about, of how it's built and how it operates and so on. So instead of knowing all the ins and outs of running a submarine, he was put in a position where he had to be the leader of an organization or a machine that he didn't know the details of how it operates. So the way he addressed it is that he had to elevate everyone's role, make them more accountable, but also provide them more freedom. And silly examples are like when someone requested days off, it had to go 6 levels up for approval and then 6 levels down. And very often, by the time it came back to the person applying for the days off, the dates that they requested have already gone by. So that just showed how inefficient the whole structure was, whereas he totally revolutionized it. And now the US Navy officers are taught based on his concept. And the final book out of the 5 that I recommend is Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. It is, it wouldn't be here otherwise, but it's one of the best business books. It tells you how to scale up a business, all the areas you should focus on, provide a one-page strategic plan so you clear, not only you, but your whole team are clear on the objectives, what needs to be done by when, what are the deadlines, and it really puts a lot of structure into a business and allows you to grow. Vern Harnish also runs various seminars and meetings, webinars, and so on. So it's definitely worth Googling him and following. Now, needless to say, these are the books I recommend, but the one that you should definitely read is something along the lines of How to Start a Business. There are quite a few out there. I also recommend reading a book about how to write a business plan, although there are a lot of people and there's this whole movement saying that ditch a business plan, just start and work your way out of it. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think you do have to have a plan, so you think things through before you actually jump into action. But yeah, there's a whole series of books about how to start a business. They probably too basic for me to discuss them here, but they are definitely the place to start. And also I'd strongly recommend reading books around finances, because if you don't understand finances in business, you will run around like a headless chicken and growing out of money. I guess that's a topic for another podcast though. So thank you for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on all our future podcasts. Thank you.